Hello there everybody and welcome to episode 18 of the Train Sim News Show. So, what have we got to talk about today? A couple things, but let's start off with the obvious. German Steam Train was released. I don't care for that. And, oh, for God's sake, look, I had quite a lot of people come up to me asking, what's your thoughts on the North London line, opinions on North London line, and so on and so forth, before the route was released, almost as if I didn't discuss this in episode 17. But I'm fairly certain I did. In fact, give me a second. Oh, would you look at that, the North London line. Oh boy, you know what? I'd actually have some form of respect for this route if they based it during the Silverlink era or Network Southeast era, where they still had the line to Primrose Hill and North Woolwich. But they don't, so it goes discarded into the box of generic crap. Yeah, I did. I mean, fair play, the route's now released, but what else can I say apart from it being generic crap? Oh yeah, it's linear, only offers one full service, it only includes one train, it's 17 miles long, and it costs 25 quid. So if you're working it out, pounds per mile, it's one of the most expensive routes on railworks, at least to date. To highlight another issue with this route, I'm going to do the same thing that I did in the Trent Valley episode, okay? Here is a map of the London Overground network, minus the recently acquired lines that they got, which are irrelevant to what I'm about to show you. Now I'm going to highlight what they provided. Can you see a problem? Well, for starters, there was no reason not to include the Gospel Oak to Barking line. If you included that, that would have also meant you would have to include the Class 172, one of my favourite sounding trains of them all. There was also no reason not to include the Watford DC line. If you included it, not only would people be able to create more scenarios on this route, but also in these scenarios, because it parallels the West Coast Main Line, you would have seen a huge variation of AI trains passing by, at speeds as fast as 125 miles an hour. Lovely. There was also no reason not to include the West London line from Willesden to Clapham Junction. And there was really no reason not to continue from Dalston Junction towards Surrey Quays to connect to the South London line's route that you released a while ago. Are you starting to see the problem with this route? It would have been much better, instead of just making the North London line, to acknowledge the fact that this is a London Overground route and make it a network. By making this route into a network and incorporating those other lines that I just showcased right there, would offer a higher replay value because there'll be more things to do, more scenario possibilities to create, and overall a higher fun factor because there's more things to do. But lol no, says Dovetail, why should we bother to create a non-linear network style route with lots of things to do when we have Muh Photoshop and day one doggy biscuit bribing offers, because that's the easy way in life and our fans will purchase pretty much anything we make, no matter how lazy, rushed or pointless it may be. So there you go, that's my thoughts on the North London line. Happy? Good. Well, I actually have one more thing to discuss about that route in general. By complete luck, I stumbled upon this on Facebook. It seems as if this person has a lot of spare time on their hands, as they're backdating the North London line route to what it was like during the 1980s when Broad Street was open and the line to North Woolwich was also still open and active as well. And you know what, I'm going to throw him a bone here because that's something not even I would do in my spare time. Well, obviously I wouldn't do it, I don't care for the route, but you know, I'd rather see the line during what it was like during the Network Southeast era, because that's personally my favourite era of them all, just before privatisation. And to be fair, it is pretty ambitious. I mean, I have no idea how you're going to do Stratford. Have fun doing Stratford, that's what I can say in regards to that. So yeah, it's a pretty neat thing. You can check out the pictures on his Facebook page from the link in the description. Oh, also, Dovetail, as this person found, why did you attach a block of flats right next to a station on the station model? So that if you want to modify the station, you'd have to do some, I don't know, witchcraft just to get it to disappear. That's just really lazy route building right there. Now, moving on. Now, as you can probably tell by the music, we need to get into the American mood, because we're going to be talking about the Class 59, which was released alongside the North London line. And spoiler alert, it's bad. Well, the first thing I can really say about it is that, well, it certainly proves that their development team are wanking over to EMD crap once again, because the engine sounds are pretty much copy and pasted from the default SD40, or the Kuju SD40 depending on when you bought Railworks. If you're gonna try and defend it and say that, oh, but they both have EMD 645 engines, well, that's an argument from ignorance. They both have EMD 645 engines, however, there are many variants of the EMD 645, and as Wikipedia tells us, they, surprise surprise, have different variants. It's kind of like saying, well, the McLaren Mercedes SLR has a V8, and the Ferrari 430 has a V8, therefore, they sound exactly the same. Which is false, and very flawed reasoning overall. The Class 59 does come with one freight wagon, the JHA wagons, which, if I'm not mistaken, have been recently renamed to HLA wagons. How confusing. Though that does bring up one question. Why only one type of freight wagon? The Class 59 is a really powerful freight locomotive. I don't think it's the most powerful train in the United Kingdom, but still it's really powerful. Take advantage of this fact by including different types of freight wagons for it to haul, such as HOAs, JYAs, JPAs, HKAs, JIAs, MRAs, KPAs, KIAs, JAAs, YDAs. Well, why stop there? Why not be a bit more original or think outside the box? How about WIA wagons, you know, the ones that carry cars, or on-track plant like YJAs, YDAs, YSAs. I can guarantee that lots of people who create scenarios will appreciate some departmental stock for them, for engineering work purposes for example. I would, especially in my route. To clarify, I'm well aware that 59s don't haul all those wagons, but it would have been nice to include some more variation, especially variation that is much appreciated, such as the departmental stock wagons, and also I would have appreciated it if they included the 59 variant 0. Being the person I am, I'd rather drive the 59 in the Foster Yeoman or the recently applied JVRF livery, instead of the DB Schenker one, which I've seen so much because I see 59s almost every week because I go past Woking. And even though I've made some personal modifications to the engine sound and some of the interior sounds, I still think the 59 is fairly bad. It's not much better than the 66 V2. Oh well, Maverick can dream. Moving on. Now on Top Gear, who remembers that sort of joke scene they did during the news show segment, where they said, I'm going to send an email to the BBC and I don't care if they don't read it. Well, I decided to do just that. Well, not send an email to the BBC, but to Dovetail Games. I sent my email through their support ticket system, and it basically contained my review with a few more added lines pasted in. I did end up making a mistake where I pasted in my review twice, but no big deal, it was still readable, and I got a response in less than 2 hours. I mean, gee, that's pretty quick. No, that's not a bad thing or anything, I was just genuinely surprised that I got a response that quickly. And it turns out that this response is news show worthy, and I'm going to respond to it right now. But before we do that, what is a response that doesn't use the obligatory transition? Take it away!
Regarding high-end optimization, the game really depends on your system build for optimization. There are many players with high-spec systems who have no issues at all.
If I see people on the Steam forums with GTX 960s, 980s or even Titan X's complaining about random frame rate spikes or poor optimization as a whole, I hope you don't mind if I remain a bit skeptical on your claim. The situation is made less helpful by the fact that the system requirements for Train Simulator are very, well, lacking to say the least. It shows the minimum specifications, which I pass, but under recommended it doesn't say anything apart from, well, QuickTime and laptop chipsets, which doesn't apply to me. If it turns out that we do need GTX 960s and 980s or even Titan X's just to get 60 frames per second, that's downright unacceptable, okay? No way around that. If somebody's just gonna come up to me and say, oh, why don't you just upgrade to a GTX 960? Well, number one, the price, take a look at that. And number two, I'm not going to invest in a very powerful graphics card for one video game, okay? Here are my specifications for my computer. I'll admit, this is not the most powerful computer in the world, but when games like Trackmania, TF2, Portal 2, Garry's Mod, Mugen, my Mega Drive emulator, my SNES emulator, and my Game Boy Advance emulator work perfectly fine with more than 60 FPS with these specifications, I do think I have some room to talk when I say Train Simulator is poorly optimized.
There isn't any current DX12 support as it is an extremely recent increment of DirectX. I do not know if this is planned or not, but even if it was I wouldn't be able to tell you. DX12 is a new technology and I don't know many games that support it.
You know what, fair play, I'll accept that. DirectX 12, like you mentioned, is very new, and maybe is asking too much for DX12 support. But what about DX11? Funny that you didn't mention that. The game runs DX9, which is really old, but what about DX11? That's easier to optimize on computers like my computer, for example, or on the newer computers, as opposed to DX9. Funny you didn't mention that.
There aren't rebeamable controls. This is an issue, but it doesn't crop up much.
So, just because people don't talk about it all the time doesn't make it less of an issue.
Many of our players are happy with the controls as they stay consistent throughout different trains.
Again, so give players the option. Let's just go back to episode 8. Mega Man 02, a game on the Game Boy Advance, a handheld, has rebindable controls. Hell, MSTS has rebindable controls. There is no excuse, okay? Provide players the option to rebind the controls if they want to. Let's say if they don't like pressing Shift Z to show the FPS counter and they want to change it to numpad plus, give them the option to do that. Why is this an issue? That is a non-issue, okay? The next part of the email is where he attempts to defend career mode, and the key word in that sentence is attempts.
The XP points in the game track progression.
Okay, 2 questions. Progression to what, and for what purpose?
You can tell how long a player has played that game and how well they have been doing by the amount of EXP they have received.
Well, number 1, that only applies if you play career mode, and not every single person plays career mode, because it's a really pointless system. And number 2, what was wrong with this? It does the job well, I don't really need to know anything more than that. And to be fair, I really don't care about how other people are playing Train Simulator that much. Well, the exception being that Pedalston guy who does the live stream, because my god, he's such a terrible driver. He's got a worse sense of direction than James May, and he got lost going from Heathrow to Hammersmith.
If you have friends who play Train Simulator, you can also compare scores.
Comparing scores? How old do you think I am? I'm halfway to getting a music diploma. I couldn't give a crap about my score on a bloody Train Simulator. My god! Wait a second. Diploma? You know what that means? It won't be too long until I'll be able to do this.
Many of our players enjoy this feature, a fact I've learned firsthand from working in customer support.
Well, that kind of goes to show how easy it is to impress people with a feature that, at the end of the day, amounts to nothing, just as long as you put enough gold sparkles and stickers on it. And were any of those people above the age of 15 by any chance?
It isn't core an element essay. Final Fantasy.
Well, if it's not a core element, and thus amounts to nothing, then
why does it exist?
I'm really confused, Dovetail. Why would you add a system that overall amounts to nothing and doesn't even provide an accurate representation of what it's like in the real world? That being said, I guarantee I could go up to any train driver or guard around my local area, or any train driver, and ask them, do you use an experience point system that awards you medals after you have driven your trains? Because I can guarantee, with a £5 bet, that they'll say no. And rightly so. Train drivers have much more to concern about rather than a bleeding point system. I can guarantee a train driver would also be more worried about, let's say, if a child was to throw a stone at his windscreen, or if someone was going to jump in front of a train, than if he was going to lose 1,000 points for going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit.
But imagine if it were. I do not imagine players would enjoy having to level up to play content or potentially have to grind for whatever reason.
Gee, I wonder why role-playing games like Final Fantasy, Xenoblade Chronicles, Pokemon have an experience points system that is a core element to the gameplay and rewards you for exploration and beating bosses, etc., and why MSTS and FSX don't. Just rolled off my tongue. Why? I really wonder why.
The physics are as realistic as the game will allow. The game engine is quite old, really.
You know what? That is so brave of him to admit that. I'm going to give this guy some credit for admitting that the game is very old and has an old engine, or physics engine in this case. This is so good, I need to put it in my Dovetail accommodation notes. Oh, there's lots of room here. Legitimate point for now. Please continue.
But the physics applied to the train should be realistic.
After making that video with the Class 180 and its AI's ridiculous acceleration, I'm going to remain fairly skeptical on what you said there. Sorry.
If you've seen a specific case where the physics appear to be completely incorrect, please let me know.
Well, I assume lots of people have been letting you know about poor physics or incorrect things about trains that you've released for quite a while.
The stability of the engine depends on the system you are running, as above. If you are having trouble with game stability, then please let us know.
I refer to you to the answer I gave about optimization. I'd also like to report that after upgrading from my laptop, which had even lower specifications, I haven't seen a notable increase in the game's stability. How unfortunate. I still root build with the mindset of, if the game hasn't crashed yet, it's going to soon, which I shouldn't have to do.
The stability of the game can also be affected by third-party content, that is, content that is not published or developed by us.
So if you want to customize your experience by having some variation from third-party content, make sure you don't have too much, otherwise the game will be unplayable. Isn't that fair? The problem there could be solved with some better optimization or a better game engine overall, because this one is just really bad.
Again, as above, the loading times are largely affected by your system's specification. If you're having trouble with a specific route loading, please let us know.
I refer to the answer I gave earlier. Again. Also, regards to the loading screens, why do you constantly shove advertising crap in my face? Why can't it just be like MSTS and have a single route loading image that people can create for their own routes as well? That wouldn't hurt at all, just give me a single route loading image instead of this advertising crap. Jeez.
Regarding the GEML signals, platforms lengths and consists, what exactly is wrong? Let me know and I can raise some bugs in the database.
As I can't find any footage of a 12-car train stopping at Manningtree, and thus trying to prove my point about the platform lengths not being able to hold a 12-car train at that station, I'm unable to back up my claim, and because of that I'm thinking of taking it away from my review unless somebody can assist me in finding some evidence regards to this, so I apologise. I am, however, able to express my other criticisms with the GEML. Firstly, I do think that the station models at Ipswich, Colchester and Shenfield do look a bit iffy overall. I think they could have been done better with more accuracy put onto them. Secondly, the GEML uses bidirectional signalling, and for the distance signals, they look like this. However, the ones that you provided look like this. This is nothing more than an inaccurate representation of the route, or as I like to put it, lack of respect for the source material. Unacceptable. I don't care if it's a little thing, it's signalling, and if you're going to use the wrong type of signal there, that's again disrespecting the source material. And lastly, only one train was provided with this route, and that was the Class 360, which is anything but the most common train that you'll see on the line. If anything, the most common train that you'll see going on the GEML are the 321s and 315s. Why did you only add a 360? What's your reasoning in that? No, wait, don't tell me, I know. It was to get people to purchase the DLC now, wasn't it? Now, to be fair, the GEML isn't the best example that I could use, and I think I might use a different example when I fix up my review. However, I haven't got the time to talk about every single Dovetail route, let's be honest, nobody has. Speaking of which, the next thing that's going to be talking about in the email is the DLC. Man, is this going to be fun.
The DLC model is controversial.
A legitimate point! Now come on Jack, build up on this, you can do it, come on, come on!
But it's DLC for a reason. You don't have to buy it.
Oh, you're doing so well! Ugh. You know, I already debunked this claim when I was doing episode 17 with Xstall's comment, so you know what, I'll just play what I said there since there's nothing I can really add. Oh, for crying out loud, how many times have I got to say this? The fact that you don't have to buy all the DLC does not, I repeat, does not justify the price of the DLC in the first place. Okay? If somebody plays this video game without purchasing any DLC, their experience will be, no matter which way you look at it, inferior and unrealistic to someone else who does invest in purchasing all the DLC and stuff.
The analogy usually used is that the game should be like a train set. You wouldn't feel compelled to buy every model train available unless you were a collector.
Out of all the points in the email, this was the most challenging to respond to. However, I do believe that I have a good enough retort for that. Firstly, why? Why would you try and treat a train simulator like a model railway? They are two completely different things, and should be not treated as one or the other. Not to mention, the whole aspect of selling train routes and trains for a train simulator has been done much better back in the days of MSTS and making tracks. Their Great Eastern add-on, for example, not only gave you a non-linear route, but they also provided a huge amount of rolling stock. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but it was a large amount of variation that led to, guess what, a lot of replay value. Would it be really too much to ask for some variation in the routes? And giving people a non-linear experience? Not to mention, it's impossible to get all the achievements unless you invest in the DLC, and that the achievements most of the times are just copy and pasted from the same ones over and over again. And, forgive me for saying this, but I'm failing to see how this analogy for model railway defends the act of releasing trains that are in a poor state and the lack of respect for source material, as well as the fluctuating quality in your add-ons. I can say right now that the Class 442 doesn't have the same hours effort put in as the BR155. Oh, that just reminded me. I remember you saying that you were going to bring out a patch for the Class 180, I think? Or the BR442 Talent 2? What happened to them? Did you leave them on the bus towards work?
It's more likely that you're more interested in one type of train and wish to pursue that area. It's a bit difficult because most other games have DLC that doesn't feel optional, or feels like content, but that isn't the case here.
Ah, okay. Well, in other news, Jews Come From Space, 1 = 0, and Leonardo DiCaprio has won an Oscar. You're not fooling anyone, mate! If anything, this game is the prime example of when DLC feels like cut content from the video game. What's the best example that I could use for this? Well... It's the Sheerness branch! Hello! What's the synopsis here? Well, the Sheerness branch is from London to Faversham, comes from Sittingbourne to Sheerness-on-Sea. It was not included with the original route, London to Faversham, for some odd reason. However, the track was laid out there was just no scenery. But then, several months later, this appears up on Steam! So you have to pay 11 quid just to have basically a scenery upgrade to something that should have already existed on the main release. But at least you get a 466 with terrible physics. But hey, we care! That's right, we care!
DLC is new content that is used to customize your game, not complete it. I will, however, be sure to pass on the feedback about old routes not being fixed.
Oh, and whilst you're at it, why don't you spend some time adding the Heathrow Express flyover? There was no reason for it to be omitted on the original release on the Great Western Main Line.
Regarding career mode, I can't really comment on opinion, but I can say that most of our players play and enjoy it.
And for that last paragraph, I refer you to the answer that I gave earlier. So, that was the response to the email, and... well, what do I think of the email overall? Is it the worst thing I have ever seen from a Dovetail employee? Well, no, actually. Because here's the thing, okay? He tried, okay? Jack replied to my email and he tried. He failed, and he hasn't convinced me that Train Sim is a good game or anything like that, but he tried, okay? And to be honest, I'd rather somebody try and fail than hide away all the criticism and not try at all, in this case. Plus, I want to say thank you very much for actually replying to my email in the first place, Jack. I'm going to be emailing this video to Dovetail as a response, obviously, but it's very unlikely that I'll actually make another video as a sequel to their emails, unless the next response that I get from them is worse than this one. And to be fair, this one wasn't really that bad. But that's done and done over with. So the last thing I have to say is that for episode 20, I'm going to be doing another Q&A again. I really enjoyed making the last Q&A, so I'm hoping I'll get more questions this time. Same rules applies, unlimited questions, any topic, I don't mind. You can post your questions down below in the comments in this video, or you can message them directly to me on YouTube, Steam, Facebook, I don't mind. Well, that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you again next time. Goodbye!